All right, you guys know I always love to show you what I'm working on around the holidays as a nice way to get excited about what's coming in the new year. And I want to show you a little bit of RetroGameForge today. I'm not going to show you too much. It would take forever to go into all the details and all the changes and all the differences between this and the current version of NESmaker and all the things that it can do. But I do want to show you something. So we're going to start off by just making a screen and the steps in sort of making a screen and how it differs from NESmaker. We'll talk a little bit about some of the things you're seeing. So what I have right now is I have basically a wizard. So I'm going to basically load a new project through the wizard, and you notice that I can also click this launch tutorial on project open, and what that'll do is it'll launch sort of a step-by-step tutorial and documentation on how to get started making a project. So for newcomers, that's super helpful. I'm going to turn it off for now, and I'm going to create a project called NES test. Let's do the date. So today's 12/22/24 NES test, and I'm going to hit next. Before I hit next, we see simple setup, and we can see that I've got an advanced setup and a simple setup. The reason for that is that when we're talking about things like memory mapping, a lot of intermediate and beginning users don't want to think about memory mapping. They just sort of want it to work. They want a place where their variables go and a place where their object variables go and stuff like that. But as you get more advanced, you might want to change, say, the amount of object variables you have. Maybe you don't need as many objects in your screen, or they don't need as much RAM, and you want to use that RAM for something else. Maybe we're talking about the header and changing things in the header, or making a different type of mirroring, or whatever. That's all in the advanced wizard. But most people are just going to want to jump in and start the creative process. So we got the simple setup that's sort of a default setup, very comparable to a NESmaker game right now, Mapper 30 with a certain memory map. So I'm going to hit next. And NES and SNES are really what we're focused on right now, and trying to make parallel development environments for each. Hold off on the Genesis right now. We're not going to talk about that yet. But let's jump into NES. And then we get this, the module setup, which very comparable to how NESmaker works. You pick the genre of game that you want. It loads in the scripts for that type of game. Right now, we're just loading in a vanilla. It doesn't matter what this says. It's loading in a vanilla sort of work environment for us to sort of sandbox in. So I'm going to hit next, and it's going to ask me, where do I want to save my RetroGameForge file? By default, it's going to save it into projects, and I'm going to hit save. And then what you see next looks pretty familiar to game development software in general. You've got your assets, you've got sort of a work area, you've got a properties panel, and you've got sort of a ribbon toolbar at the top, menu at the very top. And you've got sort of, if there's something that happens functionally with the software, you'll see a little identifier down here. So when you save it or you do something like that, if you want to know, did it happen? It'll tell you that, yes, it did officially happen. So the first thing I need to do is I need to make a new graphic. And in NESmaker 4.5, you'll see that the tools are sort of intermixed with the assets. It's a little bit confusing. Here, this is all assets. This is all tools. So they're not sort of mixed up. If I want to go to the pixel editor, I'm opening almost this new subtool of a pixel editor that will generate assets for me. So I'm going to make a new canvas. And I've got a couple default sizes, and there'll probably be more than this when we launch the tool, but I'm going to make a full graphics page. I'm going to hit create. And this is the new pixel editor, still in progress, but there are so many things that you can do with this pixel editor that you can't with the current version. There's new tools, there's new ways that the tools work. There's onion skinning and layering, all kinds of things. Not the purpose of this video right now, but I just wanted you to be aware of what you're seeing with everything. Here's your palette over here. Here is your basic tools. And then really what I want to look at right now is I want to look at importing a graphic. So I'm going to import a BMP. This is a bitmap file. You could create this in Paint, or you could create this in Photoshop or whatever. Not a CHR, not a NES file. And I want to conform it to something that the NES can read. And I've made a graphic, and you can see it's a BMP file. It's a full tile set. So this is not a NES graphic file. It's not a CHR. It's a BMP. I have conformed it to 3 colors to make my life a little bit easier, and it's pushed it through this default palette. So it's red and green and blue, and with a background color of black. And that's not really what I want. This isn't what it looks like. Now I could import this, and then I could go ahead and manually change these, or especially for more complex graphics that I want to pull in, I can hit this color matching button. So as I'm importing it, I can look, this is the original bitmap. This is the CHR file that's going to get imported, or this isn't a representation of it, but this can tell me how I'm correlating colors to these values. Right now, this is my palette that's set up. So color number 0, you can kind of see it over here. Color number 0 is going to be black. It's like right there. Color number 1 is, this is color number 1. Color number 2 is what's coming up as green, and color number 3 is what's coming up as blue. And it's being pushed through these sub palette, or these slots in the sub palette. But those are the colors I want. I want these colors. These are the colors from the bitmap. They're the ones that I designed awesome in Photoshop or whatever program I used. And so I want to see these reflected. And what I can do is I can grab this eyedropper, pick black, and say that I want to assign this color to everything that's black over here. There we go. I'm going to grab green. And I'm going to assign green to everything that's looks like that over here. I'm going to grab this sort of skin tone and apply it over here. And I'm going to grab this red. And what I've done now is I've changed my default palette to this. So this palette right now, when I hit apply, is going to update to these colors. And not only that, it took every pixel that correlated and pushed it, is going to push it to the right spot. So like I said, everything that's this is going to be now a color slot number 1. And you'll see now this is no longer the BMP. If I add this and hit save, this is now the CHR file. This is now the NES graphic. And when it's pushed through this sub palette, which I created by pulling the colors from the actual bitmap, it'll look like this. Now I could go through and I could make the rest of the sub palettes, but since I just want to sort of quickly show this today, I'm not going to run through it. I'm not going to make a beautiful, gorgeous screen with this one because I got so much I want to show you guys, and I know these videos get long. So I'm going to export this as, I could export it a bunch of different ways. I could export it as a graphic onto my desktop, a CHR file, which is a NES file if I wanted to. If I just wanted to use this image editor and I wasn't even using RetroGameForge, I just wanted it for the image editor. Or I can export it to my project. And I'm going to export this as a graphics page. I'll call it GP_NES background. Save. And what we can see is that in my graphics pages, there it is, GP NES background. I'm going to make sure that I close my pixel editor. And the difference between a graphics page and a tile set. A graphics page is the actual CHR data that's being brought into your game that's being used. It's the actual graphical data. And the tile set are references to that graphical data. And the reason why that's cool is because let's take this tree. Let's pretend that I want this tree to show up in the town tile set and in the forest tile set and in the mountain tile set. This is an awful lot of graphics data to load 3 times. It seems it's wasteful. And you know, when you're dealing with a NES, you're dealing with a very finite amount of memory. So what the ability to separate graphics pages from tile sets allows me to do is it allows me to create multiple tile sets that reference this graphics page. So I'm only loading the graphics data one time, and the tile sets, that's what I'm using to create my screens. It's referencing where I'm importing that graphics data without having to load all of this data over and over and over again. So it's a little technical thing, but I'm going to make a tile set called NES background. Hit add. And, oops, sorry. I'm going to grab this, and this is where like I could just grab this part and add it to a certain spot in my tile set, or you know, just this row and a certain spot to my tile set, whatever. If that's really complicated, you're always welcome to just grab the entire graphics page, make a tile set out of it. Bam, this will work just like you would expect it to. And then now I can go into maps and I can make a new map. So I'm going to right click, add a new map, and I'll call this map 0. And there's 2 different modes for maps to be in. There's a Zelda map mode, which is basically every screen has its own properties. That's how NESmaker works right now. But there's also, and it probably won't be called Zelda when we actually launch this, there's also a Mario mode where screens on a map have shared properties. So this is better for scrolling games and things like that. Not exclusively, you could still do any kind of game with this, but the idea is that in a quote unquote Mario, in a shared properties type screen, you're only loading the tile set when you first load the map. It's applying to the entire map, not just a single screen. For right now, we're going to use that kind of screen. I'm going to add, and now I've got this map, and you can see maps are not 16 by 16 screens in size. They're whatever size you want them to be, up to 250 screens. So if I want just a 2x2 screen, a 2x2 map, this is a 2x2 map. That could be the entire size of a map, and I could double click in order to go and enter into that map. So right now we're working on the refresh rate. Mac and PC draw different. They both have different methods on the refresh rate. Sometimes the redraw is a little bit slower than we'd like, and that's one of the main things that we're working on right now is in terms of this interface. But here's what's really kind of cool. I'll maximize this. Here's what's really kind of cool. What you're seeing here is not a single screen. You're seeing the entire map. So unlike the current version of NESmaker where you're sort of editing screen by screen, you can edit your entire map right here. So if I want to grab my tree, and I want to put my tree in the screen, I could put it in my other screen. So this is where the screens meet right here. I'm now designing both of those screens. If I want to make a path and have it come over on this screen and then have it go down, I could actually see my whole map. And I'm going to show you this in a second, what the map actually looks like. But this is the map. Like, you're seeing 4 screens worth of data right now. I'm going to close out of my screen editor, and it's going to update. It's going to save my map state, which is basically updating. And this is the map. So you can imagine in the current version of NESmaker 4.5, if you went into that overworld map view, this is what you'd be seeing. But you saw that I could edit all of it at one time. Now, I don't love this, but I'm going to continue on and edit what I started. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time. I just want to show you sort of the ease of the thing. If I was really making a map, I would make different colors for the sub palettes and things like that. This is one of those examples of what I was talking about the sort of graphic update and the hang. We're trying to get this a lot faster. There we go. And it went through and sort of had to evaluate every pixel and things like that. I'm now going to go through and I'm going to fast forward through creating a screen. So please enjoy whatever music I decide to put here. Certainly not my finest work as a screen, but I just wanted to create something real quick so that you guys can see a whole bunch of graphics added and stuff like that. I'm going to close out of my screen editor, and it's going to crunch the numbers to update the screen state and all the different screens that I went and make sure that all the data is getting recorded. And when I come back to my map, you can see the map is updated with all the changes I just made. Awesome. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say that, you know what, I'm going to start my game on this screen, so I can set my starting screen to this one. And I could even name it if I wanted to. I can name it starting screen or whatever. So now my starting screen is going to be this one. And it's got a little asterisks here. That's how I know. And the last thing I want to do, and don't be concerned about this. I want to show you this real quick. I want you to get excited about this. I'm going to add a memory bank to this. And I'll call it memory bank 0. That's fine. These are all the assets that I've created, and they are currently unassigned to anywhere. They are not being pulled into my game. When we have the modules that aren't the sandbox modules, these memory banks will already be set up and they'll have stuff in place and you'll be editing them and it'll go to the logical places. But for those of you who are in the intermediate range that like want more graphics or want more screens or want to change how where things sit in memory or want to control where things sit in memory, that don't like sort of the rigid constraints of the modules or how sort of NESmaker 4.5 works right now, you'll be able to actually look at your assets, say these are not assigned, and you'll be able to grab them and assign them to a bank. So I need to assign all of these to a bank right now. So all of these are assigned to a bank, and you can actually see at the bottom of the screen how much of the bank I'm actually using with this data. And under the hood, there are routines that are able to fetch what bank each asset is and load them appropriately. So it doesn't really matter where you put a lot of these assets. We've sort of got the system under the hood that will allow you to place. Notice in the current version of NESmaker, I have all my screens in the same place, and then my graphics are in another place, and the palettes are in another place. No, this is a whole mix of stuff. It's screens and map data and palettes and graphics, CHR files, all of it's being lumped into this one memory bank. And that's fine. And it has no problem with that, which is kind of neat. I could also like remove one if I didn't want it there anymore, or I could put it back. There we go. All right. So now that I've got it all assigned, I've picked my starting screen. I can hit the run button and it'll do exactly what you expect it to do. Just like current version of NESmaker, runs it through the assembler and then opens it up in your selected emulator. So you saw how quick I was able to do that. The fun is I want to show you the parallel process in creating a screen for the Super Nintendo. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause and I'm going to get back to the same beginning state, but end up going down the Super Nintendo route. We're going to start in exactly the same way, starting with a wizard. Go to next. I'll call this SNES test, Xmas, next. And instead of choosing NES, I'm going to choose a Super Nintendo. And SNES project, hit next. Again, module doesn't matter. And it's saving it into the project folder for this project. Save. And now you can see it is an SNES project. But I'm going to go through the process. Check it out. I'm going to go into Tools. And I'm going to go into my pixel editor. I'm going to make a new graphics page. Create. And you can now see that my palettes are bigger. But other than that, the tools look pretty much identical. I'm going to go to Import. And I'm going to grab another BMP, except this time I'm going to grab a BMP that's got 16 colors rather than just 4 colors in it. Same thing. This is just a BMP. Could create in Photoshop or whatever. I think I got one. I have one called Full Tile Set Colored. That's the one. Okay. So go into this. And again, it doesn't, this is a bad palette for this. I'm going to go into color matching. Here is the same sort of graphic, but with a lot more colors, with 16 colors. By the way, obviously I could do a lot more than just this, just like how I had other sub palettes in the NES. I have a lot more sub palettes basically that I could do with the SNES too. Right now I'm just gonna use 16 colors and already it's gonna look pretty cool. I am going to do the exact same process, except now I'm doing it for the 16 colors in this sub palette that the SNES is gonna allow me to have. And I'm gonna get black. And then I'm going to get green. I must get all my shades of green and sort of put them together. And some of these get a little bit tricky to get into, so I'd love to have like a zoom set up. Let's see. But you can see what color it is right here. What color I'm over. So I'm going to come over here. There we go. And if I have lock assigned, if I already have a color assigned, it won't let me okay, so I'm over here. You can see I'm over the color green, but if I clicked, it won't actually do anything because I'm locking the ones that are already assigned. So like right here, if I accidentally clicked a pixel off, it won't work because I'm on a assigned pixel. This, however, is the dark color that I want. And notice it goes away. Now let's see, I've got all my greens. Let me go to my grays. So I'll do like dark gray. I'll go to a light gray. I'll go to the white. I'll do my reds. Red. Light red. Here's what's fun about this tool too, is that even if you are making SNES games in some other way, some process, and you're not interested in sort of a full engine, totally cool. I'm hoping that these sorts of tools for making SNES CHR files, like that kind of thing, that's still beneficial to you. Like this can help even people who already have a pipeline and just want some extra tools for their tool belt in order to make assets and stuff like that and then export them. I'm hoping that this is also helpful for that group of people. So I've now made a new palette out of that. This is not the default. See, I have the default. This is a new palette. I'm going to hit apply. And I'm going to add this, and we can see now it's not that weird colors set up. Oh, click on it, add, and hit save. And now here it is. This is the SNES CHR file through the palette, and I might have to refresh it like that for it to update the colors here. There we go. So it's just that was just a quick refresh matter. This is what it'll actually look like through that second sub palette. I can get in. I can edit some of this stuff if I wanted to. In fact, there was one spot that I wish that I had. I wish that I had, when I'm making this building, I wish I had a full solid color of this tan color. So I'm just going to grab a filled rectangle tool. I'm going to grab that tan color, and let's see, something I can get rid of that I wasn't using is maybe this one. I'll hold shift, and that's going to lock my rectangle tool to my grids. And now I've got, oops, I've still got the wrong color selected. Sorry. There we go. So now I've got, nope, that's not the right color. I want it to be this tan color. So that's this right here. Sorry. There we go. So that easy to sort of do stuff. I could also, I've got these bucket tools, which are great. So this is a universal fill tool. So if I just wanted to use this dark color green for the entire, I could do that. I could fill this whole thing with this darker color. But let's say I want to just keep it isolated to the grid sort of tile that I'm on. If I hold shift, give it a second, and you'll see now it's relegating that same tool to just the grid. So I could, and if it's showing me where it's going to apply before I actually commit, before I actually click. So let's say I don't like this light blue down here, and let's say I actually want it to be white for down here. So I can grab the color white, and I'm going to turn off the 8 pixel grid. So it's just the 16 pixel grid. And now I'm going to hold shift. I'm going to come down to light blue. And maybe I like that. Or let's see. That. And that. So I've updated the CHR file a little bit here. I've edited it. Again, maybe for the waterfall. Same thing. Maybe I want the waterfall to be blue and white like that. I don't really like that. So I'm going to go back. Much better. Okay, so I'm going to export this, same thing that I did before. Export this again as a graphics page. I'm going to call this SNES background. Hit save. And I've now got a graphics page. I'm going to make sure that I close out my pixel editor. I'm going to make a new tile set. I'm going to call it tile set SNES background. Add it, and exactly the same process. I'm looking at it through that subpalette. I'm going to look at it through this subpalette. Doesn't really matter. I'm going to set that on the screen. Great, and you can see I've got my 2 palettes loaded here. This is the one that I actually want. I'm going to be working with, not this one. No problem. I'm going to add a map just like I did for the NES. I'm going to make it that sort of Mario style screen. Call it map 0. Hit add, and again, I'll just make 4 screens. Double click on one of them. And again, it takes a little time to catch up. I'm going to change it to palette 1, and it's got to do the redraw. You can see it takes a minute. Crunching the numbers. It's going to redraw my entire screen. It's going to redraw the tile set, and there we go. A little bit of a pain. We're working on speeding that up, obviously. And I'm going to do the same exact sort of thing as I did on the NES. I'm going to, now I didn't show these tools because I sped through it. So let me show you a couple of these tools. We do have a rectangle tool. These are the same basic tools that show up on the pixel editor. So if you know how to use it in the pixel editor, you kind of know how to use it here. I'm going to use a rectangle. And let's see, I'll do this first. And then I'm going to grab my pencil tool, and I'm going to put the edges on here. So like this. And this one's like this. And that'll give me the shadow, sort of an edging. And then, you know what? I want that rectangle tool. You can't go across screen boundaries with some of these tools, but all you have to do is unclick and then click again, and you've got it. So that's that. Now I can get into making a house. So I'm just going to grab these tiles right here, pencil tool, and grab these tiles. And I want to add an extra couple of blanks here. That's why I made this tile right here. So I'll add that, and I'll add this. And let me fill the whole thing in here. I'll grab a rectangle, fill that whole thing in like that. And now I'll put a door. I'll put a window. And I'll do a roof, and I could have made maybe the roof would have looked good if it was like red or like a slightly different color. It might have looked interesting. Keep in mind, I've got all these other sub palettes to play with that I could use for graphics. So imagine the color depth that I could get off of the screen if I wanted to. I'm going to use this. This is just using the one sub palette, and I'm already able to get sort of this much color, which is I don't know, exciting to me. I've kind of been nerding out over it. You know, I know that some of you guys have really been struggling to keep within the NES constraints colors, and I love staying within the NES constraints of colors. I love working within the constraints, but just seeing some of these graphics and some of this world through SNES potential has just made me excited about possibilities. You know, so I want to do that. I could have made this silver in the pixel editor if I wanted to match. Put a couple pots around here, put a door maybe, put a little walking path that comes out and kind of comes over here. Same thing. I could make this come over this screen if I wanted to. Let's put the tree in there. Oops. There we go. You know, I could add a little hobbit hole right there, and some graphics here, like around like that. Okay, so I've now made screens. I've made a map. I'll close out of that map. It's going to sync. Again, this takes a little longer than I'd like, but what's happening right now is it's going through and it's updating the entire map, and this is now the map, and you can kind of see. So I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to tell this that this is going to be my starting screen. And keep in mind, I told it it's going to use this sub palette instead of this one, and I'm going to click the run button. And what this is going to do is it's going to compile, it's going to assemble through the NES assembler, or the SNES assembler, and open it in the SNES emulator. Oh, sorry, I forgot to do one thing. Remember the last thing I had to do? Memory banks. Haha. Sorry, I knew I was going to do that on one of these. So I'm going to add a memory bank. Now, this is actually wrong because how banking on the SNES works is completely different, and the banks are much larger. But for testing purposes for the sandbox module, doesn't really matter. These all fit, so you can see I can see how much space is left, and now I can run. Sorry about that. Same thing as the NES. I can determine where I want certain assets to be within memory of the game, and we've got a system that can find them in their respective banks, memory areas, and things like that. So I'm going to hit spacebar, and it's going to open it up in the SNES emulator, running on SNES emulator. So the whole point of this was to show you how similar the process is from one to the next. I wanted to show you a couple of new tools and stuff like that too, but I really wanted to show you how similar the process was of going from developing a NES map to developing an SNES map, and there's obviously still a lot of little tiny things to fix up, but we're really getting there with something interesting. I want to show you, lastly, I want to show you the very simple game loop for the NES. So right now there's not much happening in this game loop. All that's happening is it's loading the palette, it's loading the tile set, it's loading the meta tile set. And it's got a couple of arguments, but it kind of tells you what they are. It's loading what value in the table, what position do we want to load, and number of slots to fill, what offset from the tile set table, starting position, placed in PPU memory, how many tiles to load, and then starting map, starting screen, like what name table load. Okay, so for those of you who are interested in the code stuff, and I'm sorry, I have to move this stuff out of the way so I can get to my thing here. So sorry. Okay. So for those of you who are interested in like the intermediate level, I want to get into the code stuff. This is the SNES script for the exact same thing. Okay. So I'm going to pull up system. I'm going to pull up my game loop for the SNES, and I want you to look at these side by side. Oops, come here. So what we see is turning off the render. We got the checking the game state, turning off the render, turning off the render. This sets a background mode, which is more important in SNES than NES, and it probably won't be handled here, by the way. It'll probably be handled elsewhere in code. And if we look at the rest, loading the palette, loading the palette, loading the tile set, loading the tile set, loading the name table, loading the name table. And even the arguments are almost identical between the NES and the SNES. And that's something that we've really been working very, very hard in doing. And why it's taking a long time is we're trying to create a system that if you know how to do one at either the GUI level or the code level, you know how to do the other. You're able to sort of adapt from one to the other and are able to sort of create in parallel, or at least once you're learning one, it's not relearning something completely new in the other. So that's taking a lot of work, and I hope that you guys appreciate that and that it can help us create some really exciting things in the future. And anyway, there's so much more to show you. This has been half an hour. I only wanted to go 10 minutes, so way longer than I wanted to show. I hope everyone's enjoyed this little look at what we've got going on under the hood, and I hope that seeing it helps enhance your holiday. I look forward to sharing a lot more of this very early in the new year.